Welcome back to lesson 6 in our little shooter game tutorial. So currently we got a little game where we hit our play button. We can shoot our enemies. If I get myself organized here, we can shoot them. We're counting hits. So we're going to change the way we do that counting hits later. Our enemies respawn at the top after we hit them. And if we manage to get hit by an enemy, okay, we're done, game's over. So basic game like that. Now, we're going to start the game a little different. We're going to have the enemies now. We're going to control the enemies. So every time we hit them, they speed up. It's fairly tricky math-wise. I'll try to explain some of the math to you, but you'll see it changes the game a fair bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to count up to a certain number of enemies hit, and then we will spawn a boss. And then our code over our next couple of lessons will be how we control that boss in the game, because every good video game needs a boss. All right, so we're going to come to our enemy, and right now our enemies travel at 5 steps. Well, we're going to essentially speed up the enemy every time we hit 10 enemies. If we hit 10 enemies, we want the enemies to come at us faster. Starting at 5 steps is okay. We can adjust that a little bit later. We'll actually adjust that down a bit, but in order to do that, we're actually going to have to turn this move 5 steps into a variable. So we're going to come over here to our variables. We're going to make a brand new variable. And that brand new variable is going to be called speed. And this will be the speed of our enemies coming down the screen. Currently our speed is at 0. And what we're going to do is we're going to give it an initial value when the game starts. So when the game starts, right below the set hits to 0, I'm going to bring in another set hits to 0. Except we're going to pull that list down and have it set speed to 3. So the enemies are going to start really quite slow. They're going to start at 3. Now, if we were to play the game right now, the enemies are still moving at 5. And the reason the enemies are moving at 5 is because here it still says move 5 steps. Now, if we want those enemies to move slower and at a variable speed, we're going to start by bringing in the speed variable and putting it right in here. So currently, they will move speed steps. Speed has the value of 3 over here, so they will move at the speed of 3. If we come here, we now see that they're moving substantially slower. Now, they're not going to change speed yet because we haven't told them how to change speed yet. And we only want them to change every 10 hits. We don't want it to change every hit. That would be much, much too fast for us. Now, the math for this is a little above your mathematical pay grade, but I will see if I can explain to you how we're going to get this to work, because we only want it to go every 10 hits. So we're going to need a little bit of parallel code in here, a little bit of polymorphism happening here. And we're going to go to events. And again, we're going to bring a when I receive, and we're going to change that game over to start. We're going to bring in a forever loop, lots of forever loops, lots of looping structures as the game goes. And then we're going to bring in an if statement. And I am then going to show you a complex mathematical equation that I'll try to do my best to explain to you without writing it all out on a board. So we're going to start with a mathematical operator of AND. So we're going to put an AND right in here. We are then going to bring in a mathematical operator of, where is it here? Equals. And we're going to drop the equals right in here. Oops, that's the wrong spot. I wanted to drop it right in there. And I'm going to take this and empty it right away because we don't want that 50 in here. And then we're going to bring in another mathematical operator called mod. And that's the tricky one. And we're going to drop it in the first half of the equals. So it is mod equals and. And then we got one more thing to drop in here, and that is a greater than, and that goes on this side. So this is a complex mathematical equation. We've got the and here inside the first bit. We've got the mod and the equals, and the greater than 50. If you want me to show you how that all goes together again, I'll just pull it all apart. Just if you get it right. Okay. So on the right side, we'll throw in the greater than. On the left side, we'll throw in the equals. And on the left side of the equals, we'll throw in the mod. And then we're going to take all of that and throw it in here. And then I'm going to show you the numbers that we're going to put in place. Now, inside the mod, we're going to go to the variables. We're going to grab our hits variable. Oops, why did that not work? That should have set nicely in there. There we go. On the left side of the mod, we're going to throw in a 10. And then in the equal sign, we're going to put in 0. After the and, we're going to put in hits. And we're going to have a greater than 0 stuck in there. Now, we're going to finish putting this together, and then I will fully explain and it will make sense. Then we're going to bring a set hits to 0 in here, and we're going to change that hits to speed. Actually, it's not going to be a set, sorry, we'll pull that out. It's going to be a change, speed by 2. Okay, and then we're going to bring in a wait block. Of 2 seconds. Okay, now to explain what this does. So the point of this is every time we hit 10 enemies, we want them to speed up. So we want the enemies to speed up after we've shot 10. We want them to speed up after we've shot 20. We want them to speed up after we've shot 30, et cetera, for as long as we decide to play the game. Now, we could do a really long set of if statements for this, but this will shorten it up, and it shortens it up mathematically by using what we call a modulus division. Now, it's a fairly easy division concept. I'll explain it as best I can. So, hits. So, say we want, say we've got 20 hits. Okay. The way a modulus division is, it determines whether one number evenly goes into another number. If a number evenly divides into another number, it will return the value of 0. If we return the value of 0, we know one number is evenly divisible by a number. So say, for example, is 10 divided by, does 2 go into 10 an even number of times? Yes, it goes in 5 times. And because it's an even number of times, it will return 0. Does 6 go into 10? No, it doesn't. It doesn't go in evenly, so it will not return 0. So we're only looking for numbers that return 0. So hits mod 10 equals 0. And hits are greater than 0. So this will be true when hits equals 10. 10 mod 10. Does 10 go into 10 evenly? Yes, that will give us 0. Does 10 go into 20 evenly? Yes, it'll be 0. Does 10 go into 30 evenly? Yes, it'll be 0. Are those numbers greater than 0? Yes. So if hits is greater than 0 and 10 goes into evenly, it will run this code. Otherwise, it will ignore it. So it will only increment or only move up the speed if numbers are evenly divisible by 10. And then after it changes, it'll wait 2 seconds. You should hit some other target within 2 seconds. If you don't, it's going to penalize you and possibly speed up again. It's a good little penalty in the game. So now if we play this game, we start at 3. By the time we get to 10 hits, these guys should speed up by 2. By the time we get to 20 hits, they should speed up by 2. Okay? So the game will become much harder. We can have them speed up by 1 as opposed to speeding up by 2 if we like. Depends on how much more difficult you want to make the game. But of course, any video game has to be able to be lost. These guys are speeding up, they're speeding up. All right. So the game becomes much more difficult as we play like this. All right, I've now lost. For some reason, it didn't stop for me there, but anyhow, I've lost. I'll check it. Why did that not stop? I got to check to make sure that this is going to stop for me. Stop all. There's no reason why that shouldn't have stopped the game. Okay, they sped up a little bit if I get hit. Okay, so it is working. All right, so that part of the game works. We now have on the enemy speeding up every time we get 10 hits. And what we're going to do is we're going to set this game so that at about 40 hits, a boss is going to show up. Now, we don't want to have to play the game to test it to 40 hits every time. So we're going to set the number much lower right now in order to get a boss to show up, because every good game needs a boss. So what I want you to do is I want you to go to the library first, and I want you to find a new sprite, and I want you to bring it in, and I want you to name it boss. So we'll just pause here for a second, pause the video, find yourself a sprite, bring it in, name it boss. I've got one already selected, so I'm going to go here to my files. I'm going to bring in my boss sprite. Here's my boss. He's huge right now. Don't worry, we'll adjust him later. The only thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go back to our enemy once we got our boss in place, and we're going to make it so our boss is going to be invisible, and after so many points, our boss is going to show up. So that's what we're going to want to do. So actually on the boss, we're going to put in a little bit of a script. We're going to bring in, when I receive start, we want this boss to be hidden, so we want it to hide. So boss goes away. And then on the enemy, we're going to put on a bit of code for the points, that when we shoot enough enemies, this boss shows up. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to need a couple of little pieces of code to make this work good. So we're going to come back to events again. When I receive start, we're then going to bring in a very simple block. It's not just a wait block. This is a wait until block, which means this is a block that's going to sit around until a particular piece of code triggers it. You're just going to sit here and wait and listen and watch and watch and watch and watch until a particular set of conditions are true, and then it will let the code go past it. So we're going to wait until, we're going to go to math, and we're looking for hits. So we're going to be hits is greater than, and if we wanted to trigger the boss at 40 hits, we'd wait until our hits are greater than 39. So as soon as it's greater than 39, it's 40. And we want to have that greater than so that it triggers if you hit 40 and 41 really fast, so that the computer doesn't miss those points in order to bring in the boss. But we don't want to have to wait until 39 to test this code. So we're going to do it after 9 hits. We're going to bring our boss in. And to bring our boss in, we are going to broadcast a new message. And we'll call that new message show boss, so that our boss is going to show up when it receives that piece of code. Now, right now our boss will not do that because we haven't coded our boss to do so. So really simple to test this out. We will then come to the boss, and we'll do a when I receive show boss. All we want the boss to do immediately when it gets this is just show up and say, hi, I'm here. So let's try this. Let's try to hit 10 enemies and see if our show boss shows up. There we go. My boss has showed up. Now, the problem is now that the boss has showed up, I still have all these enemies falling down the screen. And when you fight the boss, you're only going to fight the boss. And yeah, I know my boss is crazy big, and that's okay. We're going to stop that. The boss is going to go away. I need to get this boss to go away. I'm just going to hide them, and then I'll shrink them and all those kinds of good things here in a second. So we're going to want the enemies to disappear. And before we do that, let's just shrink our boss here. Let's make our boss a decent size. So when I receive, let's go to looks. Let's do a set size 2, and I'm going to make my boss here. Let's show him here to start. Let's change my boss down to about 40% and see what I get. Still a little big, 30%, 25%. He's got to be bigger than the hero by a fair bit because he is the boss. I'm going to make my boss at about 20%. So versus my hero, he is about that big. So about twice the size of the hero. He is, of course, the boss. And then when the game starts, that boss, of course, should hide. So I set by at hide. Now, what we do not want, as I said, when we shoot to 10, What we do not want is all these other enemies. The only thing we want is the boss. So we want all these other enemies to go away when the boss shows up. Now, in order to get that to happen on the enemy, right below this code, we're going to add a when I receive show boss. Now, you'd think you could put it right here to get rid of the enemies. It will not work. It's just, for some reason, it will not move forward here. We need an extra piece of code. So when I receive show boss, what we're going to do to the enemies is we're going to hide them. And then we're going to add a nifty little piece of code, which is it on the events? No, it's on the control. Oh, we're going to bring in a stop all, but we're not going to stop all. We're going to stop all other scripts in the sprite. So all of this inside the enemies is going to stop working, and only inside the enemies will stop working. And then at the bottom, we're going to delete the clone, which means all of those sprites are just going to get wiped out of the memory. They're just going to be gone. So when the boss shows up, all of our enemies are going to disappear. They're going to hide. They're going to, all of the script is going to stop within the enemy, and the clones will be deleted. So let's see how that works. So let's shoot 10 of these guys, and then our boss should show up. Okay, we're going to end this video right here. And our next series of videos, we're going to start moving the boss around, and then eventually we'll get the boss shooting back at the hero, and that'll be our next tutorial.